Welcome to Her Media Diary, the podcast where African women share their real stories, bold moves, and behind the scenes moments that shaped their journeys. I'm your host, Dr. MC Akimobola, and with each episode, we're pulling back the curtain on what it really means to build a media career, break barriers, and stay true to your voice. Whether you're starting out or already making waves, this space is definitely for you. In today's episode, our focus is on the rise of technology facilitated gender based violence and how artificial intelligence, AI, social media platforms, and tech companies are shaping and sometimes threatening women's safety and freedom online. Our guest is Dr. Grace Githaiga. So, Dr. Grace is a policy leader, digital rights advocate, and the powerhouse behind the Kenya ICT Action Network, KICTANET. Yes,
That's right.
KICTANET. So that's the Kenya ICT Action Network, KICTANET. She spent years shaping Africa's tech policy landscape and centering women in conversations about internet governance and digital safety. Today, she joins us to unpack what feminist digital justice really means in the age of AI and why we must act now to make our digital futures safe and inclusive for all. So stay with us. Good morning or good afternoon, Dr. Grace.
It's already good afternoon here in Nairobi. Uh,
Great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
Same here, same here. I'm really glad that I'll be sharing some of our experiences and actually addressing this topic that is very close to my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that from your kind of past and the work you've done over this many years. So I'm looking forward to learning so much from you. But let's start by going beyond the title and where you are today. Who is Dr. Grace Githaga beyond the policy tables and TV screens?
Okay, Dr. Githaiga is, like you have rightly pointed out, is this person who has been in policy conversations, initially policy conversations, supporting community radio in Africa and ensuring that regulators considered and actually embraced it and entrenched it as a third sector when it comes to broadcasting regulation. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And apart from that, actually, I was trained as a journalist, but in 2011, I just tweaked into technology. And I must say, again, I have found myself when it comes to tech policy. I enjoy what I do. Besides that, Dr. Githaiga is a mother of a son and a daughter.
Yes, and I met your daughter just briefly just now. But before we go, because there's something that you said really interestingly there around that shift from journalism to tech. And I'm going to come back to that in a second because I really want to go back as early years, of Grace before you became Dr. Grace. Growing up, did you grow up in Nairobi or in Kenya or somewhere else?
No, I didn't grow up in Nairobi. I grew up in Kenya, but not in Nairobi. I grew up in a town known as the Flamingo City, and that is Nakuru. So, born, yes, brought up, it's the city that has flamingos. So, I was born and brought up there. And I only came to the city to attend college after high school. And let's just say, like they say, the rest is history. I never went back to Nakuru. So, I only go there to visit.
Yeah, but what was I mean? Like, I have this very beautiful image of flamingos in Nakuru, and
Yes.
I know. I mean, I've not been there, but obviously the visual representation of it is very beautiful. What was it like growing up? What was your household like? Did you have siblings? Tell us about growing up there.
Yeah, actually, we grew up in an ordinary Kenyan family. Both my parents were teachers, primary school teachers. So, we grew up in that simplicity, but we were a very happy family. Five of us, four girls, two already are late, and one boy who happens to be my last born brother and the only brother. But we grew up in a home that always had relatives. So we really never experienced growing up as a nuclear family because there were always relatives in our house. My father happened to have been the eldest son in their family of 11, nine girls and two male children, and he was the fourth born by the eldest. So he was constantly taking care of either, his sisters or my cousins. So we didn't really grow up as a nuclear family, and I'm only getting to experience that now with my family, because we didn't do that. But needless to say that we were happy. There was always something to laugh about in that house, and there was always something new because somebody, every time, either it's an uncle or an auntie, there was just something new in that home, and a very warm home, yeah. But my father was also, apart from that, being a father of four girls. And I must say that my sisters were actually the two late ones, were very beautiful girls, and even the one who is still alive is really pretty. And I think I am the different in that house. I was the firstborn, but I am kind of different, short, the shortest, kind of the darkest. Actually, neighbors used to call our home the home of the brown girls. That's how it was all known.
But it's interesting that you can make that distinction about short and darker skin. Like, do those things factor in how you were kind of observed and seen as you were growing up?
Now having been in this debate, I will tell you, I think it's a discrimination thing. Because discrimination happens, when we talk of women being discriminated. I think discrimination is also at different levels. If you notice, women who are considered plump are discriminated because, they are not considered beautiful. They are not, they will not be going on those beauty pageants. Women, for example, I've always asked women who are my color, maybe now, but initially, women my color would never find themselves in those beauty pageants. I had a stint, I was a Humphrey Fulbright Fellow in the US, and because I was doing very unique work, I guess my name was bigger than, than me. So my name was recognized, and so I would get invited to provide I had speaking opportunities, and I would be invited to speak about my work, especially on community radios in Africa. And sometimes I had an African Brazilian roommate, and I would tag her along in such places. And every time we got to the place, people would greet us, "Hi, Grace," and because she was also in those debates on discrimination, she would just go straight and tell me, "Grace, is because you're short." So they think they think I'm the one providing speeches, and should be very quick, and this is Grace, and she'll just really enjoy looking at people's expression as they realized that the person they invited is not what they imagined.
Mm. But it's interesting that despite all, I mean, that's so incredibly, I don't know the right word, disempowering. I don't know how you felt, but this persona, this idea of there's a particular image or look that one should have that kind of aligns with the perception of who you are. Especially, somebody like yourself has done such amazing work, but there's still that connection with your physical appearance. How did you navigate that?
I never allowed anyone to make me feel small. Actually, it's never even occurred to me that being short is a
It shouldn't be a
discrimination.
thing. Yeah.
For me, it was a strength because I was short, I was petite. I would be, I guess, in places where people didn't expect. So I took it as an advantage. And even, my classmates, everyone would be saying, "Oh, this small girl is in, I don't know which class." And it would make me feel so happy. So I think for me, it worked the opposite. I think it encouraged me. It made me feel proud of what I had done and where I was. So it has never, never been anything to me.
Yeah, and of course, you've worked across technology, governance, media, all over the world. Not focusing on Africa, but also being all over the world with your amazing work.
Correct.
And you said something earlier on that you made the leap from journalism to technology, and I'm really intrigued by that. And I'll tell you why, because I was at a conference recently where in Zambia, Livingstone in Zambia, where there was this very, intense conversation about actually media organizations need to begin to recognize themselves or begin to embrace more and see themselves more as media and technology organization and kind of not separate the two. So tell us about your journey, like that transition from journalism to tech and kind of how that's evolved over time.
I tell people that actually it happened by default, because I had been working and establishing community radios in the region. And that went on very well after a lot of fight with the regulators, with the government, because governments wondered why, I was pushing for community radios that would be utilizing local languages to articulate their agendas. And so in African context, where you have governments that are suspicious, especially when they speak in a language that they cannot understand, made me look, it just gave me that strength that I was forever agitating. So whenever there was a meeting and I knew I needed to make a suggestion, or I needed to use the platform to articulate the community radio agenda, I would do that. So part of the work was establishing the community radios.
Mm,
But together with colleagues, we realized that you can't establish them without uh, a binding law or policy that supports the establishment. And so, in the
mhm,
course of my work, I had to work a lot on policies. So, some of the things I was pushing for, one was the recognition of community radios as a third sector in broadcasting policy. I was also, pushing for them to be allowed. I actually pushed for what we would call, um, um, I forget the word, but like, when it came to paying of frequency fees, I pushed for that to
mhm,
have different provisions, so that the public broadcaster pay different, commercial broadcasters pay different. And then I pushed for affirmative action when it came to community radios, because I was saying these are tools that are helping communities speak to each other and also speak their agenda. And it's communities that have no money, so you can't make them pay the same amount as commercial stations. So I actually pushed for that affirmative action. And then I was also pushing for the public broadcaster to be also recognized as a public broadcaster that actually serves public interest.
mhm.
And towards that,
In public
towards that,
interest,
I
absolutely.
actually did a book on public broadcasting in Kenya. Now, when I came back from my when I came back from my stay in the US as a Fulbright fellow, I remember it was at a time when we had a government that was starting to recognize the usefulness of media and the convergence of technology and media. And so again, I jumped onto those debates, and there were regulations, broadcast regulations, that were produced. They were called the Broadcast Regulations of 2010. And in that, actually, I would say 75% of what I'd been pushing for was effected. And I remember the director of the National Communications Secretariat that was in charge of
Right.
formulating,
Amazing.
coming up, supporting the Ministry of Information to come up with those laws, walked up to me and told me, Grace, you are you are the winner in these regulations, because what you have been asking for has actually been adopted. Um, then he told me, I think now you can consider going on retire. And I remember we really laughed. We laughed, and with the people who are sitting with me. And I asked him, now, if I retire at my age, what will I do before I get to the age of retirement?
Mm, absolutely.
Yes. And at that point, I remember going home and thinking, hey, what did he tell me? And I thought, actually, he has a point. Is there anything new that I can add into the sector? And I just thought, it doesn't seem like there's anything new I can add into this sector. And I think I have done my bit. I have brought in all the energy I needed to bring in, and we have made wins. So I started thinking, okay, what next? What next? What do I need to do? And it is actually at that point that I applied for there was a PhD scholarship.
Right.
And the PhD, actually, there were two opportunities in that PhD scholarship. And the way a friend of mine just shared it with me and said, this looks right up your step. I saw community radio, blah, blah, blah. Then there was something on tech and women, da, da, da. So I actually thought I would apply for the community radio one because that is what I knew best.
Mhm.
Uh, and I completely forgot about it. Then I remember just actually 2 days before the deadline, I remembered about that scholarship. And I just said, you know what? I need to give it. I need to try it out. It would be such a mistake if I do not try, and then I'll actually be regretting. So I woke up and I read, and I realized the community radio scholarship was for Tanzania. The tech one was for Kenya. So I called a colleague and we discussed, and he advised, this is something you can do.
Mhm.
You've been working with women in radio. The only difference here is tech. And tech, nobody was born with tech.
Mhm.
So this is what you need to do. I remember I read that Saturday, I read and read. And then Sunday, I started doing my concept. And I didn't finish it until maybe 3 a.m. in the morning. So I shared it with that colleague of mine, and I asked him, please check because I need to submit it. The deadline is 5 p.m. Kenyan time. And I went to sleep. When I woke up, I found he had responded, but given me so many comments. And I responded to him. I called him and I told him, his name is Njuki. And I said, Njuki, you've given me so many comments. I do not have time to respond to comments. What I want you to do is to give me high level comments that I can address in 10 minutes. So while on the phone, he told me, number one, the concept requires that you only do 7 pages. Yours is 10 pages. Can you look for areas to cut out? And so, we worked together on that, and I was ready. So I remember I went actually, I submitted that concept 2 minutes to the
To the
deadline.
wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow.
And
And
then
of
1 week
course
I was
you,
called for an interview, and then the same day I was awarded the PhD scholarship by
yeah.
Danida, that is the government of Denmark. And
Mm,
so that's how my journey changed, because now then KICTANET, KICTANET was then an email list.
mm,
And a friend of mine, her name is Alice Monua. She's now moved to Mozilla. Was the convener, and I remember just sending her a message and telling her I'm available. If you need support in anything, let me know. And immediately she responded and said, there's this research we are
mm.
doing. We are looking at the dark sides of ICT, how ICTs affect women, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you can come and support in that. And so I got in, and I had just come from an academic institution. I was able to, support that research. And then there was a meeting, I think, in Johannesburg, to meet with the freedom of expression rapporteur to help
Yeah.
him come up, what discuss what are the issues in tech. And it had brought together so many people from media. And so when she said I would represent her, because she didn't want to go because her daughter was home and was going back to school. So she wanted to spend time with her daughter. And so when she said I would represent her, they thought I was at the same level as her. And they gave me a topic that I did not even understand what it was all about. I still remember it was on intermediary liability. So I didn't know what that was. But anyway, being a researcher, you talk to people, you understand what happens. And I remember one gentleman, his name is, he's also in KICTANET, and we did that study on the dark side of ICTs with him. His name is Muriuki Mureithi. And he explained to me what intermediary liability was all about. And so from there, I went and presented, and I got very good comments. And I later was told that my paper was one of the best in that conference. Out of that, I was able, I think I just found favor with different people, because out of that I got sponsorship to go to the summer school at the European university in Hungary. I also got a sponsorship one week. The same people who sponsored me to go to wherever, they sponsored me to go to Harvard for a week for a conference again on tech. And then I think there was a third training. Yes, there's an organization called Diplo that provides basic, like introduction courses to internet governance. Again, they gave me a scholarship. By the time I was done with those three, I had become an expert. And now I completely changed, and I can comfortably say that I am one of those main voices in Africa.
Hello, Hermida Diary listeners. Permit me to introduce to you the Kigali Declaration on the Elimination of Gender Violence in and through Media in Africa. It's a groundbreaking commitment to address the forms of gender violence experienced by women in media and how media reports on gender based violence. So, whether you sign up as an individual or as an organization, it is a sign that you are pledging to consciously play your role in tackling this important issue and working towards creating safer and more inclusive work environments for everyone. Imagine a media landscape that treats every story with balance and every voice with dignity. By adopting the Kigali Declaration, it's not just a commitment, it's a powerful step towards social change. And that change starts with us. So if you are ready to take that bold step and make that social change, visit our website at africanwomeninmedia.com/declaration to read the declaration, to commit to it, and to begin to take action. I mean, if I may, if I could summarize that kind of journey that you've been on, it started off with somebody posing a challenge to you. Now that
Yes,
you've done, what next? Basically,
correct.
was the question.
Yes,
For them, it was a retirement. For you, it's like, that's true. What's my next big challenge? And
yes,
then taking those bold steps each time, whether it's to apply for that scholarship that you felt you maybe it's not for you, but you still went for it anyway. Whether it's giving that talk that
yeah,
you knew absolutely nothing about, but you still decided to show up and do your research, and
yes,
subsequently everything else fell in place, right?
yes,
So that's kind of, it's a very powerful, strong journey that
mhm,
brings you here to where you are today as a very significant voice in this space
mhm,
around tech, media, governance, across the continent.
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
And and just thinking about that very early on research around the dark side of ICT,
Mhm,
bringing it to 2025, where we are now, and we're talking about technology facilitated gender based violence, we're
Mhm.
talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all that. In simple terms, how do you define technology facilitated gender based violence, especially now that AI tools are you know, the thing, they're here to stay. We're in it now. It's no longer a thing coming up, it's not emerging, it's here to stay. How, and also reflecting on that very early research to where we are now, what has changed?
First, I'll say, technology facilitated, we call it TFGBV, technology facilitated gender based violence, is actually violence that is enabled by technology. So we are talking of internet and through different platforms that can be, can be through the phone, can be on social media, can be on email. So it is that violence that can people see it, but then because they are enabled with internet, with bundles, and they have platforms where they can express themselves, so they do that. So looking at it from a very simplistic definition, and in the way that I understand it. Now, one of the things that has happened is that over time, since we conducted that research, and now over 10 years, yes, because it was actually I think we conducted that in 2012, then we had an update in 2014. um,
Mm,
there is an increase. There is an increase of technology facilitated gender based violence because, number one, we have seen more and more people utilizing the internet. We have seen populations adapting, online platforms that is facilitated maybe by phones. At least for Kenya, the fact that there are so many people coming, utilizing mobile phone. Mobile phones have also contributed to more people getting online, and the more people get online, then we're actually starting to see a lot of misogynistic content.
mhm,
Secondly, I think people feel safe that they sit behind a screen, and they can sometimes we say poop, they can
mm,
poop online, thinking that they have that safety, and that is targeted at at it. We're also starting to see men suffering, although women have actually been the bane of that suffering. um, we are also seeing an amplification of that, because sometimes people find online platforms the most accessible, uh, and the most available tools for them to express themselves. So we are finding an unprecedented way for people to communicate, and as they communicate online, for example, if you were to look at the Kenyan communities, it's as if they had been locked somewhere. But now these online platforms have provided them an avenue to express their anger, to express their joy, people now, really, in practical terms, people have become prosumers, where they produce and at the same time they consume. So that availability of the platforms, I would say, has exacerbated TFGBV as we know it, and the fact that even now we are finding even young men and young women involved in it. Initially, it just used to be, like, for example, women in positions, especially women in entertainment, journalists. Those would be the ones who would really suffer. But we see now, practically everyone is affected. And in 2025, I think now, with adoption of artificial intelligence, with adoption of generative artificial intelligence tools, we are seeing, the tools have actually simplified the creation of that non-consensual intimate imagery. And that we see actually, I'm sure you have seen use of artificial intelligence where the voice sounds almost like somebody's, similar. Um, and of course, it's not necessarily true. So, what we are seeing is that AI, in as much as it has come to simplify the tools, it's actually, intensifying trauma for women when they are attacked. And that is, through even deepfake pornography.
Mhm.
That is so common, especially where women are concerned. Currently, I'll tell you, in Kenya, there's a content creator, a famous content
Mm.
creator. Let me not say who he is, because I think I'll be participating in that TFGBV. Him and his wife, I think, fell out, and so
Mm.
it is said that he shared his wife's nudes on a family WhatsApp group.
Wow.
And so the wife retaliated and did that, shared
Mm.
his nudes online. And then I think she thought twice and brought down the posts. But people had already taken screenshots.
Shots, yeah.
So there has been that tiff, the two of them, including him saying that when they started dating, she didn't have, I think, teeth. And so he's
Mm.
asking her to return the teeth. And it is so funny, because that teeth
Mm.
now is on different platforms, and it's been going on like for 3 days. So you can imagine the trauma for those who are going it, because I think the trauma is both ways. And so again, what we are seeing, initially when we did that study, women would be attacked, and what they would do, they would just leave the platforms. And so we were encouraging women to try and not leave the platforms, because they the fact that they leave the platforms denies them the right to and to engage, to associate, to express themselves, and those are rights that are provided for in Kenya's constitution, in the Bill of Rights. So what we are saying is that there is now more, and that I think the algorithmic amplification of that of such content now becomes, I think, it's being generated more. So you just need to go on one platform, see that, the beef and the insult, and then it's, algorithm. They start bringing you more and more, and it is because of artificial intelligence can tell some of those sites that you visited, and some of the content that you visited, and then that way, then it sort of intensifies more people to be able to see.
Yeah, we'll come to algorithms in a second, but when you think about, from your perspective, when you think about policy and governance, do you think, especially with the kind of cases that you're highlighting, and also I should also add the caveat that we're not saying that there should be limited access, because
Mhm,
access is good, right? There is a positive side of it. It's just about actually how does that access function in a way that does not disenfranchise certain communities or certain conditions and
mhm,
contexts. So,
mhm.
do you think our current laws and digital safety measures are catching up fast enough to protect women, especially from AI enabled abuse and violence?
I think, and now that is something you have made me think, because like at KICTANET, we have been at the forefront of AI principles, supporting AI policy work. And now I don't remember if we put in anything on women, which would be so wrong, because we are the center of looking at how women can be protected. But in terms of law, whether law is handling that, one, I need to still point out that law always plays catch up where technology is concerned. We have seen the dynamism of technology, and sometimes by the time law catches up, that technology has actually uh, evolved into something else. And so I think what is very important is that we need to keep these conversations alive and push for I know we have been trying to push for this in our law, but I won't say we have been successful. The only thing I will say we have been successful is that now we are getting people to talk about TFGBV. There are more conversations, there are more organizations participating in this. We are getting even lawmakers to start discussing this. So it's a journey. Advocacy can be slow. It's a journey, but somehow we may get there. So, and of course, what we need to do
Mm,
is push for criminalization of TFGBV. And because also
mm,
sharing of information, especially on the different genders, I guess also is to continue contributing to the data protection law. For example, Kenya's data protection, so that now they have a mandate, or we support a mandate for people to be able to disclose when they use deepfakes or when they are using AI. And of course, I don't know, but there is also need for platform accountability sometimes for content moderation, because some platforms also that kind of, they need to check on their algorithms, because when platforms pick on those deepfakes and they emphasize, they are enhanced. I think for me, I would just say we need a very honest conversation, and that conversation must be must bring the different stakeholders together. At KICTANET, we are very strong on pushing for multi-stakeholderism approaches, and in such a in such an issue, I would say that this calls for honest conversations and multi stakeholder collaboration, so that we have the government, we have tech firms, we have civil society coming together to I think we are calling it these days what? Co develop, co produce, co-create policies, where we probably insist that, as a rule, especially for maybe content moderation and platforms, in terms of accountability, that we put a certain percentage of for human oversight, because even as we know how AI works, we know it still requires some human touch, some human control to determine what is possible or true within each context. So there are also contextual stuff that needs to be put into consideration. And finally, I think it's very important for those of
yeah.
us working in tech to continue with awareness campaigns. We shouldn't really tired, because sometimes you put something online that is meant to be a campaign or an awareness, and you get your good
Mm,
measure of attacks on why you are doing it. So I think it's very important that in this
yeah.
multi-stakeholder collaboration and approaches, that we get each stakeholder to do awareness campaigns, to do digital literacy in areas that they work on, and of course, emphasize on the need for concept. When you share my pictures, when you share information about me, that information about me as a data subject, we need to emphasize on the importance of consent. And of course, even as young people engage online, to continue raising awareness on the need for engaging and embracing secure practices, and emphasizing that in as much as you have freedom of expression, that freedom has limitations in so far as your freedom affects mine. And to simply just emphasize that, your freedom ends where mine begins. Just to break that down and to let people know that that is very important. So what I'm saying is that the journey, uh, we there are still so many rivers to cross, but we must remain on the big picture. We must advocate for secure and robust online platforms that allow people to also express and engage while also feeling safe.
Yeah. And I suppose part of that journey also, to connect back to what you said earlier on about algorithms, is who's producing these AI platforms and how well we are empowered as African women, people on the continent, people from different diverse backgrounds to produce their own AI tools in order to kind of begin to mitigate some of those biases that perhaps exhibit because of who's creating the AIs.
Completely agree with you, and I think when it comes to tech tools, there's need to actually deploy AI driven safety features in those tech tools. I know sometimes we talk and people tell us what we are supporting is theory, but we must also push for what we call safety by design tools, so that people are thinking. We need to think about reporting portals. We need to have a place where people can report if they have been attacked, so that, I think we also need to do like now what platforms have started doing. There are communities, online communities that support the engagements. I think we need also, basically that safety by design is very important if we are going to support, to have AI. And I know AI, for example, it's still evolving, so sometimes we don't have time to start talking about regulation of something that we do not understand. But we can have principles that guide that, and of course encourage where experimentation, sandboxes that allow for people to experiment with AI, and those safety features that we are recommending. Otherwise, if we don't try, we are still going to exacerbate, online violence, and still one gender. I think the women are more affected than men. So yeah, we must do something.
And which is why it's important that as these conversations are happening, that they are also being grounded with the lived experiences of African women, also and the very particular experiences of African women, in all of this.
Completely agree with you. I think as you just said that point, it ignited that thought. Remember, there was a time in the US when they had that campaign of Hash Me. If you remember, that women were being encouraged to report of harassment, sexual harassment.
The Me Too
What?
movements, the Me
Yes,
Too movements, yep.
yes. What I realized is that African women are harassed a lot. but they don't have the confidence to speak out for fear of stigmatization. And so, when it comes to tech, there, I think we must also push. And I'm so happy that this conversation we are having, because we've been working as KICTANET in this, and these are some of the things that I haven't thought. We must push for confidential reporting.
Yeah.
Reporting that enables secure, evidence,
Mm.
secure evidence storage, and then prioritizing, especially when a woman says she's in trouble, just
Mm.
prioritizing to see how that woman can be helped. So basically, I guess thinking out of the box, uh, having a holistic approach. How do we integrate safety into AI? How do we integrate? How do we start thinking of legal aid? Even legal aid, for example, when you go onto platforms that have chatbots that are the ones that respond to you. So I think this is it's still, they still, that they say the long road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking, I mean, you've obviously been in this space for decades, right? Was there, when you reflect on that time, was there a turning point, maybe a case or a moment where you thought, if we don't get this right, women's rights will be set back decades by technology? Was there any moments like that that you had that revelation?
Actually, when we were updating our study in 2014, one of the Supreme Court judges coming to our launch. And as a guest speaker, she had actually suffered. She's a very beautiful woman, but somebody had actually put, photoshopped and shared her news, supposedly nudes. And she said she went to talk to the Minister of Interior because she thought of the need for security. And he just found it such a joke that he laughed so much. Didn't realize that, the judge had suffered. So at that point, we realized, when you do research, you also need to come up with, with practical solutions, because um, we realized, even out of the other women that we talked to, those who had been affected, they had left the online platforms. And we thought this is not right, because why are women being ran out of these platforms? And so we realized that it would be very important to actually suggest practical measures. And one of the things I know that we have continued doing that came out of that research, we did, lobby funders to support resource allocation into capacity building, especially for the groups that were highly affected. It's the bloggers, it's women journalists, it's women human rights defenders. And we have continued to build capacity so that uh, then they know how to stay safe online. Issues of digital security. How do you defend yourself when you're attacked? And I must say that that work has actually continued to grow. So apart from capacity building, and which I am so happy about,
Mm.
because for example in Kenya, so many other organizations have taken that, meaning that there is still so much work that needs to be done, because as KICTANET, we were only, what we were doing was just a drop. So there are many other organizations that have taken that agenda. We have also seen funders taking that as a very serious issue, and there is, resource allocation to many different organizations to do that. So for us, what we are doing now is, continuing again to look at, for example, we've just released a study on just looking at the legal framework on, what supports this area, and just highlighting what are the gaps. So out of that, we're actually going to continue doing advocacy so that we can have strong laws, like we are saying, advocacy so that we can have security by design platforms. And I know, like I have rightly pointed out, advocacy can be very slow, but we need to stay on the game.
Absolutely. And so, what are some of those gaps that your study found?
One was, of course, that women were afraid to engage once they had been attacked. Or you're saying the legal framework?
Yeah, the legal framework.
Yes,
Yeah.
the legal framework is that, yes, we have laws that support issues of online violence, but they're not specific to gender. That's a major finding.
And do you see feminist thinking really helping us reimagine these policies and legal frameworks? How do you see that maybe informing our approaches?
No, definitely that is very important, because you need to make it an issue. You need to point. We need to point out how this relates to feminism. We need to point out what are those gaps. We need to, because policymakers, legislators don't have time to read, or even to, sometimes, they are too busy engaging their their supporters on the ground. So when it comes to this high level, I think, there are other places that we can borrow. I am sure there are places we can borrow from, like the EU's, what they provide, and I think, especially like when it comes to AI, I think Rwanda is also doing something. So it's just look at what has worked in other areas, and what can we adapt.
Mm. And you've trained and mentored people, many people through KICTANET. So,
Yes.
what practical advice would you give to activists, journalists, content producers who are worried about being targeted online?
Number one, that they need to learn more about digital security. They need to embrace cyber hygiene as a practice, so that every other day, they're changing the password. When they go onto platforms, they sign out as opposed to closing the browser. They also need not to feed trolls. If they are trolled, sometimes you need to engage from a very mature perspective, but don't engage trolls, don't respond to them. And then, once it's a criminal, they think it's a criminal offense, we have mechanisms. We are telling people we need to start reporting, even to, for law enforcement, so that they can see that it is an issue. If it is only one person reporting, they don't consider it as an issue. So we encourage people to report. We also encourage people to report on the platforms that they are utilizing, so that then even the platforms can actually start seeing that this is an issue that requires attention.
Absolutely. And for those our listeners who are passionate about digital rights, who are passionate about digital safety, and want to get involved in that area of work, but don't know where to start, what would you say to them?
I would just say that they are absolutely welcome to engaging in this sector, and it is because what we are doing, it's just a drop in the ocean. So, and it is because of technology. So, for example, because of technology, that dynamism in technology, we are now starting to see misuse of personal data. When people have, we have our data online, so that data being misused, being used for doxing, for intimidation, that actually was not there when we did the first study. So we are starting to see violation of privacy rights. We are starting to see use of AI, to demonstrate, or to project the different genders, of course, in negative light. So what I'm saying, because technology is so dynamic, sometimes we don't know the end game of technology. So I would say the more the merrier, and it's not enough. There is still so much to be done.
Much more to be done. Yeah. And when you think about the future of technology and gender justice in Africa more broadly, what gives you hope?
And the fact that we have now more people engaging in the issues, the fact that we are starting to see lawmakers also interested in the issue, the fact that we are also starting to, create awareness, especially with the young people, so that they realize that even as they communicate, there is also the need to, to respect other people's rights, and to, that there are issues about violating privacy rights. So for me, that ongoing conversation is very important, and it gives me hope, because when we did the study in 2012, people didn't even understand what that meant. There were very few women online. Now there are so many women online. And we have, of course, continued to see more attacks that are being facilitated online. So that continuous conversation is very important, and it gives me hope, because one time we will all agree to sit on a table and agree what is doable and what is not doable.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Grace Githaiga. It's been a pleasure listening to you and hearing your decades of experience in the field. Thank you so much for joining me.
Welcome, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
So, technology can build bridges or reinforce barriers. As we've heard from Dr. Githaiga, it's not just about regulating AI or chasing down harmful content. It's about reshaping the digital world with empathy, with equity, and with intention. Thank you for listening to Her Media Diary. If you found today's conversation inspiring, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. If you'd like to join me on an episode of this podcast, send me an email at yemisi@africanwomeninmedia.com and visit our website, hermediadiary.com. Subscribe and follow Her Media Diary on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And you can also tune in on our partner radio stations from across Africa. And don't forget, join the conversation using the hashtag Her Media Diary. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep amplifying the stories that matter.